Hello, everyone. My name is Garvin, and today we're hopefully going to wrap up a series covering the cursed lineage of heroes and demigods, House Atreides. Today we'll be looking at the children of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, that being Iphigenia, Orestes, and Electra. Now, some of this has been covered before, but I'm going to ask everyone's indulgence as we try to cover everything in one go and wrap it up with a pretty bow. We're going to start with Iphigenia, since it's her fate that starts all of this. Although, if you ask me, ultimately, this is all Paris's fault. For those of you who didn't watch the Clytemnestra video, first of all, feel free to give it a look. Second, a brief recap. Agamemnon follows in the family tradition of offending Artemis and paying a terrible price for it. In this case, he offends Artemis by killing a sacred deer, and in response, the gods demand he sacrifice his eldest daughter, Iphigenia. The play Iphigenia in Aulis by Euripides, which was written between 408 and 406 BC, is the version that most people use, and I'm going to stick pretty close to that. In it, Agamemnon is basically browbeaten into summoning his daughter by sending a letter asking her to come so he can marry her to Achilles. Achilles is completely unaware of this lie, and I can see this feeding into future conflicts between him and Agamemnon. While Agamemnon does repent and try to stop the letter from going out, he is foiled by the other army commanders. In the play, she ends up volunteering so that the army can sell, but in other versions, she goes to the altar thinking she's going to be married to Achilles right up until her throat is slit. In this play, Clytemnestra came with her daughter, and Achilles learned what was going on from Clytemnestra, and to his credit, the boy is willing to fight the entire Greek army to stop this sacrifice from going through. I say boy because at this point, Achilles is like 16, 17. Now, Artemis changes her mind and whisks Iphigenia away at the last minute to Taurus, which is in modern Crimea. There, Iphigenia is installed as a priestess of Artemis and is basically held captive by the natives and not allowed to leave. There are other traditions. Hesiod's Catalogue of Women claimed that Artemis transforms Iphigenia into the goddess Hecate. Another tradition holds that Artemis whisked her away and then married her to Achilles after his death, which I think puts us at like 3 different wives for this guy after he dies. Wherever he is, if he is living in a Greek afterlife, he is partying it up. Meanwhile, Clytemnestra, who doesn't know that Artemis stole her daughter, has gone home thinking that her husband murdered her eldest child. She doesn't take this well. I'll point you to the Clytemnestra video to see the fallout of that. It involves a battle axe, though. There are competing traditions here, so we're back on the choose your own adventure path. Either Clytemnestra fostered her son out to another king to raise while he was in infancy, or she decided to murder him but was thwarted either by the boy's nurse or by his elder sister Electra, who smuggled him out of the city to that Greek king. In the dramatic trilogy Orestia, a set of plays by Aeschylus, written in the 4th century BC, Orestes is ordered by Apollo to avenge his father. When he gets cold feet, he's goaded into this by his sister Electra, which I feel is a little manipulative and unfair. I mean, if Electra's so hot to avenge her dad, why not do it herself? Clytemnestra did her own killing. She's even living in the same house as her mom. So, why not just wait until mom's asleep and, grab the same axe and go to work? But no, she pawns this off on Orestes, and while he has no problem killing his stepdad or his mother's husband, or however you want to look at it, he hesitates to kill mom. And who wouldn't? But Apollo and Electra really push him into it. and this ends up getting the Furies, a trio of Greek goddesses who punish evildoers, unleashed on him. This kind of makes me wonder if Electra knew this was coming and decided to let Orestes take the fall, which, man, that would be dirty. Now, if we stick to Euripides, Orestes is driven mad by the Furies, and only Electra can keep him calm for any amount of time. The men of Argos have resolved to put him to death, and when Orestes turns to his uncle Menelaus for help, Menelaus decides to throw him to the wolves. Our hero. Orestes, in response, decides he's going to kill Helen because why not at this point? Only for Helen to vanish before him and Apollo to appear in a puff of smoke, order Orestes to Athens to be absolved from his guilt in a trial, and while he's at it, he also turns around and says, "Hey, Menelaus, marry Orestes to your daughter Hermione, and go get remarried to some nice Greek girl." Orestes flees to Athens, where Athena puts on a trial and declares he is to be granted mercy. The Furies, deciding what we needed in this story was a good old side quest, say they'll obey the judgment as long as Orestes does one more job for them. And so they send him to Tauris, where Iphigenia comes back into this story. Now, for this story, we have to turn to the Euripides play Iphigenia and Tauris. Orestes has been sent by the Furies to steal a wooden idol of Artemis. Their manner of worshipping Artemis is a bit hostile, as it involves slitting the throat of any outsider they find as a sacrifice to the goddess. This is done by a captive priestess who turns out to be Iphigenia, who's been forced into this role. The siblings don't recognize each other at first, partly because Orestes refuses to just tell her his name, and also because she heard he was dead. It's also been 15 years, so it's a little hard for them to recognize each other on sight. When Orestes, however, realizes who she is, he reveals himself, and after she does a brief interrogation, she realizes this is in fact her idiot little brother. With her help, they are able to escape with the idol in question. However, there's a complication, which leaves me feeling like this is a D&D campaign that just won't end. Menelaus, ignoring Apollo, because that has always worked so well for this family, has married Hermione to Achilles' son. This boy is terrifying. When he was just a 15-year-old boy, he murdered King Priam of Troy by grabbing the body of a fully grown armored man and beating the king to death with it. He also enslaved Hector's widow, Andromache, and got her pregnant before marrying Hermione. This has gone over in the play Andromaches by Euripides, where Hermione is plotting against the woman, thinking that she has struck a Hermione barren with her Eastern magic, so she can't bear Achilles' son and heir. Her father Menelaus is of course helping her in the plot, probably out of a grudge against all Trojans. Now, Hermione's actions are cruel, but they're driven by fear. She has no brothers, no close kin, her mother is gone, and her father is old. Without a son to defend her, if her husband dies, and Andromache's son inherits Achilles' wealth and kingship, she is completely at their mercy. Hermione would also likely believe that as the daughter of Helen, it's likely that Andromaches would see taking her out as a way of getting some revenge on Helen for bringing Achilles to Troy, causing the city's fall, Hector's death, and her enslavement in the first place. Andromaches, on the other side of the coin, is alone and enslaved in a foreign country. She has been reduced to property and has no defense other than her own son's success. She can be killed at any time and no one will care unless her son ascends to the throne. These women have been put into terrible positions by the men in their lives, and they don't dare do anything but play full contact for keeps. Orestes burst into this story like a hurricane, catching and killing Achilles' son and claiming Hermione as his own wife. He also seizes the thrones of Argos and Arcadia in a blitzkrieg campaign. Sadly, Hermione's opinion isn't really given in this situation, which I feel is too bad. Andromache's son is saved by his great grandfather Peleus, and I find myself feeling really bad for this guy as well. Peleus was a member of the Argonauts and a hero in his own right, and he's outlived his first wife, who he actually was in love with. He's abandoned by the goddess Thetis, his second wife, although I can't blame her for leaving. Peleus also lost a number of his children with Thetis in their infancy, lost his son Achilles, and now his grandson is dead. And all he has left is a single infant great grandson and Andromache. This guy is cursed enough to be an honorable member of House Atreides, if you ask me. Orestes would have a son with Hermione named Tisamenus, but Orestes would eventually die of snakebite. Iphigenia was installed as a priestess of Artemis in Athens. Electra married Orestes' best friend and seems to have lived to a grand old age. Tisamenius, Orestes' son, would later be slain by invaders and leave no heirs, becoming the last of House Atreides, which is the sad and tragic end to the entire house from what I can find. I would like to note real quick that snakes were linked to Apollo, who has repeatedly shown up as a foe to the entire family. And if you follow my theory, he used Orestes to do his dirty work here. So I'm adding it as possible circumstantial evidence to this whole thing being a plot to Apollo, possibly to just get rid of this house that has offended him and Artemis so many times across so many generations. But maybe I'm wearing too much tinfoil. You tell me in the comments below. Well, folks, that wraps up the sad story of House Atreides. I hope you enjoyed this video, or at least found it informative. If you did, please leave a like or a comment, as that does help me in my eternal struggle with the Dreadlord algorithm. Terror be on his name. If you really enjoyed, consider subscribing, or even joining the number of my Everwise patrons. This video and the last one was a special request by one of them, and I hope it was everything you were hoping for, Crensby. Speaking of patrons, I also like to give a special thank you to my biggest patron, Big Steve. As always, man, thank you for your support. Next week, I'm going to take it a little easy. We're going to do a brief video on some of my favorite mythological beasts that don't get a lot of attention. After that, we're going to end the year with a book review. Yeah! Until then, everyone stay safe, keep reading.